Hello everybody, this is Bradley from RaceBeacon, and today in this video we're going to be discussing a driver who I think, now, he hasn't gone under the radar, but maybe warrants a little bit more discussion in this whole Oscar Piastri contract drama. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, it really helps out and you can always change your mind later. Today I'm going to be explaining why I think Daniel Ricciardo actually holds all of the power here. Now, it's no secret that Daniel Ricciardo has been struggling at McLaren for the last 2 seasons ever since he moved there. He only has 19 points compared to Lando Norris's 76 so far in the 2022 season. So you may be thinking, well, how does this mean he's got power? He's an underperforming driver at the moment relative to his teammate, and he's been there for 2 years and the team want to get rid of him. But that's where the power comes from. This little line here, McLaren seeking to buy Ricciardo out of his contract. And of course this all comes from McLaren having that agreement in place with Oscar Piastri. The media has reported that McLaren won't make any announcements until it is confirmed that Daniel Ricciardo has a seat elsewhere. But also I think that's very much the right thing to do, because I don't think Ricciardo would actually accept a buyout of his contract anyway if he didn't have another seat lined up. So this all leads up to the latest news that Daniel Ricciardo has reportedly set a $21 million target as the price for McLaren to buy out his contract. And the thing is, McLaren aren't left with a lot of options here. He at very least, we'll get on to Alpine a little bit later, but he at very least has a lot of power over McLaren here. He has got the leeway, because if he refuses any proposal that McLaren come forward with, he will be driving for them next year, because if he does accept a contract being bought out and there's no clause that says McLaren could just pay a price and it's automatically cancelled, then what can McLaren do apart from offer him more money? So Daniel Ricciardo sets that hefty $21 million price tag. Well, if you're McLaren now, what do? You've got Oscar Piastri, who is only coming to you because he doesn't want to sit another year on the sideline at Alpine, because that's originally what the arrangement was going to be, before Vettel retired and then Alonso announced his move to Aston Martin, because everyone thought, including Alpine, that Fernando Alonso would remain at the French team for another year into 2023 at the very least. So Piastri and Mark Webber, his agent, were thinking, brilliant, let's go look elsewhere then, because that seat's going to be taken. Alonso's going to have that seat. Ocon's contracted until, I think, 2024. So let's go look elsewhere on the grid. So they come to McLaren and say, can you give us a drive next year? Yeah, sure, Ricciardo's underperforming. Let's have you. Obviously, the slight problem there was Daniel Ricciardo is contracted for 2023, and that's where all of this buying out of the contract comes from, because as it turns out, as it seems, there's no performance clause in Daniel Ricciardo's contract, or at least not one that can be activated from McLaren's end. Like I say in all of these videos, we haven't seen the contracts, so we're going purely off what the media have said. But the fact that McLaren haven't just triggered a performance clause in Ricciardo's contract, releasing him immediately, and there's all this talk about so much money being demanded, that tells me that there's not a performance-based release clause from McLaren's end. There's probably one that Ricciardo can trigger, saying if McLaren are too low in the standings, then he can leave, or if a bigger team comes to offer him a drive. But that's definitely not happening at the moment, because McLaren have got a pretty good car. Daniel, yes, he is much lower down in the driver's standings, but he's not going to trigger a release clause on himself when, like we say, he can be getting all of this money. So without a McLaren-triggered release clause in the contract, they are left with no other options apart from basically meet whatever Ricciardo says. He could effectively hold the team to ransom for as much money as possible. And I don't blame him. I do not blame him one bit. I would be doing the exact same thing in his situation. You could argue about the morals of it, but look, he's looking at the financial stability of his family and so on for, that is several generations into the future. He is doing, for him, what is the right thing to do. And I think, honestly, if most of us were professional sportsmen, the exact same thing that we'd be doing. Now, if you're Oscar Piastri, that's a tricky situation, because I think this is the only way he still ends up at Alpine next year, despite being very adamant that he will not be driving for Alpine next year. And to be honest, I think now the relations are probably quite sour between him and the team. I don't think that'd be an easy relationship at all. But very quickly as well, we're going to move on to why Daniel Ricciardo might actually hold some sway, but this all depends on Pierre Gasly's release clause. Helmut Marko has come out and said that apparently there is no release clause in Gasly's contract for if a bigger team comes to him. And I'm not sure if I believe that, because first of all, Helmut Marko's quotes are often very just not accurate. That's he knows what he's saying, it's PR talk, and it's very rarely right. But also, if you're Pierre Gasly, why has he signed a contract with the team that's demoted him that doesn't have a release? Why would you do that at his age? It's either some really, really poor negotiating and business from Gasly's end, or well, genius from Red Bull. So as we've already gone over, Ricciardo absolutely could hold McLaren to ransom. There's no doubt about that. But this could be an absolute cash cow for Ricciardo, because if Alpine aren't able to get Gasly out of his contract, they're really left with no other options, no other experienced options. So now Ricciardo can start saying to them, hey, would you fancy an extra 5 million on top of that contract that you're offering me? Because, you know, I'm the only experienced driver out there that still needs a drive. You can argue Mick Schumacher probably, but if I'm choosing between Ricciardo and Schumacher, I'm still going to pick Ricciardo, even though he has been underperforming recently. I still see nothing from Schumacher to suggest that he should be in an upper midfield team. And with the rest of the grid pretty much fully contracted, that only leaves Alpine with basically Théo Pourchaire or Daniel Ricciardo. One of them is going to be a lot more expensive than the other, but also probably going to give you a lot better performances, especially if that car does go back to suiting him again, unlike the McLaren. So guys, let me know what you think. Does Daniel Ricciardo really hold that much sway over both of these teams, or at very least McLaren? I think he absolutely does on McLaren. But guys, let me know what you think. Is it right for Ricciardo to be holding out for this much money, considering that's more than $1 million per point scored this season, which is quite ridiculous? I think he's doing the right thing. From a personal point of view, I think it might be a little bit cheeky from a contract point of view, but at the end of the day, that's silly season. And if you want to follow every single twist and turn of silly season this year for the rest of this month and beyond, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell as well to get all of the latest updates and analysis as soon as they drop. But guys, have a great day wherever you are in the world, and as ever, until next time, goodbye.